Looks like Brett got things figured out here, and he shall be joining me in just a moment. Oh, here he is.
All right. Now, hopefully that gets it. Looks like our internet was really being crazy. Not sure what's going on, but hopefully it works now.
Yes, hopefully. Did you forget your computer?
No,
No?
I did not.
No?
I did it on purpose
Okay.
because I am that good. I'm going to do it from memory.
Okay.
What were we doing?
You're going to quote the Bible verses of... Did we? Did you read the woman who touched the hem of his garment already?
Yeah, we did that one.
Okay,
so we're on the Canaanite.
Yes, you're on the Gentile woman,
Yeah,
yes.
the Canaanite. So she was evil already because she's from Canaan, and so she's a Canaanite, and that was even worse than, like I said, it's kind of like Jonah and the Ninevites. That's how they felt about each other. And so here was this woman following Jesus, and she was calling out, have mercy, Son of David, have mercy on me, and they kept ignoring her. The disciples, for sure, ignoring her. And for the first time, they're like, now Jesus is doing what he's supposed to do. Ignore these kinds of people, because she's not even Samaritan, she's Canaanite, and oh my word. So certainly he will not talk to her. And yet, after a while, her pleading and begging, he turned to her and told her that it was not right to give the bread of the, sons of God, the Israelites and everything, to, and toss it to
the dogs.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then she countered with, even dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And just really not giving up, pressing Jesus, please help me, because he was that desperate, and she had faith. And then Jesus said,
your daughter's been healed because of your great faith, or you have great faith.
You have great faith. And I've never, a lot of people look at that story, and it is kind of one of those stories you look at and you go, what is going on here? But Miranda has it all figured out. I like the point you made with it.
That must have been a little bit later.
Yeah.
But basically, since we're wrapping up the unworthy section of it, the theme of humility runs through all of these.
And that's what she was. Very humble. Very, had lots of humility, because one, she was begging for Jesus, and two, she wouldn't give up. So she had this great faith, not in herself.
Right.
She was fully aware of her position, but she had great faith in what she had heard about, maybe have witnessed, the love, and even the way Jesus treated other people. She had faith in what he would do, not anything. She knew she was nothing. She had great humility, but great courage in pressing her request.
Yeah, and it sounds as though the daughter wasn't there with her either.
Right.
So you've got two of those people two of them that weren't Jews, who just believed enough that the person that was healed wasn't even there in the presence of Jesus.
Right, absolutely.
So moving on to unclean, all three of them would have been considered unclean.
Yep.
The centurion was a Roman, so
that made him unclean.
Mm-hmm. And then the woman, of course, who touched the hem of his garment, by all means, had been unclean for 12 years because of bleeding like that. And then the Canaanite woman was unclean once again because she was born into that.
Yes, just because of who she was.
Mm-hmm.
So all three had this unworthiness. All three would have been labeled and felt unclean. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, anyways, they each had a faith, though, based on their own personal experiences of who they were.
Yeah.
So, and it was their faith that made them whole. Mm-hmm. It cleansed them. And you have a note here, it's hard to be lost.
So, the idea was that it's just human nature to want to earn things. We want to earn our salary. We want to earn the respect of others. We want to earn love from others. The things we do, and then we just have a natural human innate thing of I do, therefore I get. I do, therefore I deserve, you know. It's just kind of built into us. That's the economy we live in, is a transactional economy of, you know, give and take. And when your whole life is like that, it's easy to just subconsciously apply that to your relationship with God and your, you know, how you practice, you know, your religion, your spirituality. Even you may not be aware of it. Subconsciously, you do things, and you just have this innate thing of, you know, if I'm good enough, you know, God will grant me answers to prayers, you know. If I can just be strong enough here, or have enough faith there, if I can just da-da-da, you know, I will earn, you know, favors from God. And that's not how it works. Clearly, by these three people's stories. But also, it almost seems like it makes, you know, salvation this thing to earn. And again, consciously or subconsciously, you know, we sort of feel that on the inside. And yet I have this belief that it's much harder to be lost, you know, much harder to be lost than it is to be saved. Because God is trying to save everyone, not keep them out from heaven. He's trying his best to get everyone into heaven. And so, you know, I think these people show a very good illustration of, you know, they were unclean, they were unworthy, they had not even close to a pure faith. And yet Jesus was granting their request and saying to one of them, this is the greatest faith I've seen even in all of Israel. God wants people in heaven. And it's not transactional. It's not about anything we can or cannot do. It's about what he's already done. It's hard to be lost. Much harder than I think we believe it to be. We believe it's easy to be lost. Boy, if I just screw up a little bit, I'm gone. You know, and that's not how it works.
Yeah, I also find it interesting how, I mean, the last couple of weeks we talked about the disciples in the storm and how Jesus said, "Oh, ye of little faith," and yet he still got up and calmed the storm for them. Mm-hmm. And in that case, it wasn't what they had done. It was what Jesus had done for them. And yet these stories almost seem to be the other way around, because he's like, "Oh, you have such great faith. You're healed," or "Your servant is healed," or whatever. And so I think really faith is certainly a broad concept that has many facets to it that we learn about and we can have, and God grows within us and such. But so many faith is so many different things in a way. Yeah. But it is not something that we can do for ourselves. We cannot grit up, like you said, like you were just saying, you cannot grit up enough faith to.
And almost like the disciples had assumption, not faith, because in the end they didn't ask Jesus, or, you know, go and say, "Well, Jesus, I know there's a storm. What would you like us to do?" I mean, they blame Jesus. "Don't you care if we die? Like, why aren't you doing something?" And yet the centurion and the other two, you know, the woman bleeding and the Canaanite woman, they were desperate, and yet came to you, pledged to you, asked him, and believed that he could do if he was willing.
Yeah, and you know what? I just thought of something. That was a belief, a faith in his words, mm-hmm. That if he were just to speak or whatever, that it would be done. Mm-hmm. And when you take a look there in Hebrews 11, the Great Faith chapter, anybody who's listed there mostly, it says Noah was recognized, of course, he had great faith because he built the ark. And it was, all of these people were named because they had out the words that God had spoken to them. And so they had faith in God's words. And clearly these people had faith in God's words as well.
Yeah, that's the centurion. Say the word, it'll be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that. Yeah, the Great Faith chapter, they were great believers because they had faith in the Word of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they actually carried it out and did it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point.
So yeah, clearly these people believe that the power within Jesus' words would do what they were asking him to do.
Yep.
So the next we're looking at unchosen. They all.
So if you look at the TV show, there's a TV show called The Chosen. It's about the disciples.
Yeah.
This is The Unchosen.
They
that would be a great TV. Aspen, write that down. That would be a great TV show for them to The Chosen and The Unchosen.
These are people that would have appeared that God would not choose these kind of people. There was no reason for God to choose these people. And yet, did he not choose them and use them as great representations of what faith in him was?
Wow, I didn't think that's good. The unchosen. Because the disciples certainly would have seen themselves as the unchosenable, like unchoosable, if that's a word. Like, who am I that the master should call me? And yet they look down on these people. Like, these are really the unchosen.
Yeah.
And yet it's true. That's like, no one would suspect God's, no, they're not going to use these people.
Yeah, I mean, walking through the marketplace or walking through town, you would never pick the bleeding woman, the Canaanite woman, or the centurion as people who God would choose to represent.
And to have their stories for all time.
Yeah, for all time. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And so, did they not represent those who chose to spend the gold coins of faith with reckless abandon? I mean, this was not small. They spent as if they had more to spend. Yeah. And that is what faith is. When we spend all that we have, in a sense, we have more than what we started with.
Well, I was going to say, if you look at it in that sense as, the gold coins of faith, they spent what little they had and got way more in return and had more to give away.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. You spend and you get more. You spend faith and you get more. And
right. That's because you're working in God's system rather than...
Which you see all through the Bible. Elijah and the woman who made him bread, and the bread never ran out, and the Moses and the water and the rock and the manna. And I mean, it just, you think it's just more and more. Yeah.
Yep. So faith was what allowed them to press forward despite their unworthiness. And they were unworthy, and clearly we're all unworthy. But God is certainly willing to give us faith and grow our faith for us. He shows up as a faithful God despite our unworthiness. And so they were unclean, they were unworthy, and to human appearances unchosen. But Jesus was clean, and Jesus was worthy, and Jesus was chosen to deliver his people from their sins, and all people from their sins, despite what the Jews thought at that point in time. Yes. So by faith we are set free from unclean, and because God has chosen you and he has cleansed you, because of Jesus we are worthy. We're worthy because he created us. We fail to see how worthy we are to Jesus and how much he wants to do this stuff for us.
Yeah, again, I think it's hard to be lost. It's like we're not begging God to do something, and you're like, he says, "Well, all right." No, I mean, this is, the Father that loves you that wants to do these things.
Yeah, unlike us, when God asks us to do something so many times, well, all right, fine, I'll do it.
Not that it's ever happened to Brandon.
No, of course not. No, sadly, it happens because you're like, oh, do I have to? Oh, I don't want to. Well, I know I want to. But, we seem to find others unworthy of our love and forgiveness and such things. Yeah. So, and it takes faith to live that out. So, so we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and we're to use the faith that God has given us to purchase the white raiment that he offers us, so that we can stand before the throne of God redeemed. And that's God's faithfulness and Jesus' faithfulness to us. You said you had something to say about the white raiment?
Nope.
Well, at one
Yeah,
point,
actually, I did.
at one point in time, he did. So
No, it's just when we get into it, there's like so many ways. I'm like, we could go on because I thought
Yeah.
because you actually had more pages and you went down in Revelation.
oh, right.
And,
Next week we'll probably be expanding on that verse, Revelation 3:18, where I advise you to buy gold from me refined by fire, so that you may become rich, and white garments,
Yeah.
so that you may clothe yourself, and the shame of your nakedness will not be revealed.
And the eye salve.
Yes, and the eye salve, yes.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go into more of that, but we decided that's best for next week.
Because it does
Yes.
apply to these people. Like,
Yes.
you know, the white raiment, you know, the righteousness and, you know, the truth and the faith. I mean, these are things that apply to all three of these people and to us as well, you know. And we're going to get into, because that was a, you know, Laodicea and interesting things about what they did there with cloth and stuff. And the what does the raiment and the eye salve and all that cost? You know, we're going to kind of get into that, because that is also part of what was going on in Revelation. What these people had, you know, that they were unworthy, they were unclean, they were done, and yet they walked away with the white raiment and the gold and the eye salve. And I thought that was really interesting. That these three people were very good illustrations of what you know, God is saying to the church of Laodicea to do this. Let me do this for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so while we may certainly be unworthy and unclean, a recognition of both of those will lead to knowing that we have been chosen by God Himself.
Yep. It's sort of like the door that opens. You know, I recognize my need. You know, until I recognize my need, I don't. I can't see what really God has done for me and is offering me. I have to first recognize my need.
And once we recognize our need, and by faith, that door is open to us, and we walk inside the more that God has for us. We couldn't even begin to imagine
Yeah.
what more He has for us.
Yeah, what
And-
He says, beyond the imagination, what you can think of, is what I have planned. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's living by faith.
Yeah.
Just going through those doors that He has for us, and believing that they're the good and right thing, living that out because we are in a love relationship
Yeah.
with Him,
Yeah.
not because it's making us good and all this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
So I hope everything worked at the end. I know we had the interruption there. I'm not sure if Husband got around to sharing it back to all the pages and stuff, but hopefully the second half of the broadcast was flawless and smooth. Like I said, next weekend we'll be talking about, I guess, Revelation.
Yes, Revelation 3:18.
3:18. Yeah, should be good. I've already seen a preview of it because Miranda had already written like, I don't know, a couple
Yes,
pages on it.
yes, it's pretty well written already, but yeah.
No, it was good. So, let's do this thing. We decided to split it in two because this was one and that's going to be one, and it's really, really good. To, you know, this is a good one, Revelation, and just a lot you can say about it. So it's going to be fun. All right, well, thanks for joining us. Hopefully things went smoothly, and next week things will go even more smoothly.